What's going on, guys? I hope you're having a great day out there today. Guys, we're going to go over a few of the upgrades and key things that I have done to many of my cars here in the fleet. Everything from Team Corrali, Techno, Arma, Traxxas. Not much of a Traxxas anymore, but still a Traxxas. But we're going to go over some of the upgrades and the key things that I've done to mine. There's lots of upgrades out there. There's tons of stuff out there they make for these cars. And obviously, a lot of it depends on your bashing style and what exactly you're doing. Now, any of you guys have been on my channel know what I do with my cars. I'm not really gentle on them. I feel like I put them through a decent amount of beatings. So I'm going to go over some of the cars, try to get through a lot of them, and show you some of the key upgrades and stuff that was a must and was the best upgrades, and some of the stuff that maybe wasn't necessary. So stay tuned, everybody. Let's start this thing off with the Outcast 4S. All right, well, we just recently went over the Outcast 4S. And you guys seen the last video on this at the skate park. Body took a beating. The car took an absolute thrashing down there. So I picked up a beautiful new red body for this thing. She's looking pretty sharp. Went over this thing from top to bottom and checked everything out and made sure everything was tight. Also added a few things from Jenny's RC. I ordered up one of those bag kits where it comes with all the different parts and pieces of a lot of the plastic accessories, bodies, and stuff. Added the upgraded, the newer version sides on it here for the dirt guards, which are nice. As far as the main upgrades I've done to this thing that have been very key and important to this car are these two things. Now, if you own a 3S or 4S Armor with a composite chassis, if you do nothing else to it, this would be honestly the first upgrade I would do to any one of these cars, and that is this. The chassis brace from M2C Racing. Guys, this thing has been holding up phenomenal since installing this thing. That was kind of my big issue with the 3S and 4S cars with the composite chassis. I was constantly breaking and splitting these things in half. Since installing this, I have had very, very minimal issues after that. I think I kind of cracked one part of the chassis once, but ever since installing that and the top center brace, I have not broken a chassis since, and this thing has definitely seen some decent abuse down at the skate park, and she has been holding up awesome. I went over the shocks, did a little bit of oil changes on there. I think I went up to 70 weight front and rear, I believe is what I'm running in here now, and it feels really good. Beyond that, the car's pretty stout right out of the box. Now the wheel nuts. Now, depending on the wheels you're running, these wheel nuts are a lifesaver for one reason, is that they cover up the ends of your threads, and whenever you have those sideways landings on the concretes or slam into stuff, you're not tearing your threads up and having a hard time getting the nut off or back on again. So if you're not running, if you're running very shallow wheels where they're sticking out of the threads, on the 4S and 6S backflips, it's not as big of a deal, but depending on your wheels, the wheel nuts are definitely a great add-on, but they look cool also. But that has been the best things I've done to my Outcast 4S, and I changed the gearing on it, but everything else is all stock, electronics, motor. I am running a HItec servo in here, which has been holding up amazing also. But other than that, guys, Outcast 4S is just one of the best skate park bashers out there. Now we got the Techno, the ET48 2.0 down here on the bench. Now, we've talked about this car before. I'm not going to get a whole lot into it. Obviously, it's one of my favorite bashers. This thing's a blast. It handles amazing, jumps awesome. Now, if you're wanting to take your stock ET48 and suddenly just go out there and start bashing a little bit, if you do one thing to it right from the start and nothing else, change out the front center brace. I found this one on eBay or Amazon, I can't remember. This was made by All Racing, but it basically puts an aluminum center brace all the way from the front bulk all the way to the rear diff, and it stiffens this whole chassis up a lot and keeps this center drive shaft from bending. If one thing you're going to do to it, and one thing only, that would be it. We're not going to go over the ET48.3 here. Pretty much the same thing. They make an aluminum center brace for this car also. Very similar cars, both a lot of fun. But let's go ahead and talk about the Isuga. Now, this is what I was talking about with, obviously, depending on the car and the wheels. On the depth of the wheels, on whether or not the wheel nuts are a big benefit. Now, on this car, they definitely would be, because I have already had issues with these wheel nuts getting torn up. Now, these are the M2C Racing locking wheel nuts on here. They do cover all the threads just enough. However, you can still you slam into a rock and hit the pavement too hard, they will end up gouging the corners, and then you're having a really hard time getting those back on and off again. So the covered wheel nuts are definitely a benefit on that part. Besides the wheel nuts on the Team Corelli Asuga, honestly, guys, most of this car is just an awesome rig right out of the box. Not many complaints at all. If you're going to buy a brand new one of these things, and there's one thing that has to be done on this thing, if you're going to be jumping this thing and doing some larger sends with it, the aluminum center braces are a must. The stock plastic one up here in the front tends to snap off right here at this screw, so I had ordered up the Team Corelli 7075 aluminum front and rear chassis braces on here, and I have not had an issue since. We are also running the stock now. If you guys remember, I had a carbon fiber one in here. It did not work out. It was failing, breaking. So I'm now running the stock Team Corelli aluminum brace, but I'm now running that prototype piece from M2C Racing to brace the aluminum. We're going to see how that holds up on here, if it keeps this front piece from twisting or bending. It's a work in progress and finding out what works. But besides that, guys, honestly, the Asuga is a beast right out of the box. Besides those two, besides the aluminum center braces, which honestly, if you're, like I said, if you're going to do heavy bashing, is a must. Beyond that, the new battery box adapter from M2C Racing for the Arma battery box, so you can take an Arma battery box and mount it on your Team Corelli, is an awesome upgrade. The battery boxes do tend to snap in the front, especially if you're lawn darted it at all. So being able to go to an Arma style battery box is an awesome upgrade for this car. And if I was buying this over again, I would pretty much just automatically go to the Arma battery box, put the aluminum center braces in, and call it a day, because the rest of the car, power-wise, suspension-wise, and overall durability, she's pretty much spot on right out of the box. Now we'll go ahead and talk about the Kraton 6S XL here. Now again, wheel nuts, they're sunken in there pretty deeply. Rarely ever have issues. Not a concern with putting on the extra covered wheel nuts on these, because there's a lot of space in there where you're not going to damage them, so I'm not as concerned about those ones. Now on this car, obviously this is a whole nother beast. This was a Kraton 6S extended with the Mojave chassis, as many of you guys have known and seen these out there for a while. Again, just really quickly, any Arma 6S, the first thing I buy for any one of mine are the aluminum differential cases in the rear. The front, I'm not as concerned about, but the rear differential cases, getting a proper aluminum one. I've been running the Hot Racing ones. I've had a Vitivon ones. It doesn't matter, whatever your choice is, but the aluminum differential case is going to save you a lot of headaches with your differential problems and stripping gears. Get a good case on there, shim it properly, and you'll have far less issues with your differentials for sure. Beyond that, I mean, obviously this car is nothing but one giant upgrade. We got all M2C Racing chassis and chassis braces and hinge pins and emulsion shock setups and the Basher Queen carbon fiber shock tower. And also, guys, this is one of the first cars I ran the carbon fiber shock tower, the tower-to-tower brace on. The stock ones, it was constantly bending and snapping the ends on. The Basher Queen one here has been holding up phenomenal. But again, if you're going to do one thing to your new 6S Arma out of the box, get rid of the plastic differential case in the rear. That's just my opinion, but the plastic ones are going to cause you nothing but headaches down the road. We got the Typhon 6S down here on the bench. Again, another car that obviously is heavily upgraded. First thing I did to it, aluminum differential case in the rear. Obviously, this is running a lot of M2C Racing parts. Also, we were running the HItec servo in here. And guys, you know, I know there are prices of servo out there. Everybody has great luck with different servos. I have bought many different servos. I have gone through many servos. So far, I have been extremely impressed with testing out these HItec DB961 servos. Any guys have seen the vert ramp launch down there, this thing landed flat to concrete, sheared the motor off, but the servo keeps ticking. So I'm definitely impressed with them. I know, obviously, the price of them are up there, you know, a bit more expensive. I get that. Trust me, I completely understand. But, you know, again, if you're looking for a good servo and you don't mind spending a couple extra bucks, I definitely check them out. They're worth the money. Beyond that, the Typhon 6S has been a work in progress, done many upgrades as this thing changes. However, one thing that has always stayed true to it is the stock power system, and this thing absolutely rips. Everybody's always so quickly to want to just rip the stock power system out of cars and throw something ridiculous in there. And honestly, a lot of times you don't always need all that extra ridiculous power. I mean, this car has jumped some amazing distances, caught some great air, some terrible landings, and the stock power system in these things work amazing. I did obviously kill the motor on the last jump down there at the skate park because I flat landed it. It crushed the bottom of the motor. It doesn't matter what system you have in there. That's not healthy for it. It's not normal to do that to a car. However, I wanted to have some fun and do it anyway. But the Typhon 6S, awesome platform. But again, if I was going to buy this car, and the first piece I'd buy for it, rear diff case, and then probably the front upper hinge pin brace, because on all the Armas, it's always a weak spot. These pins, they're plastic. The stock ones are plastic. This one's from M2C Racing, but the stock plastic ones always bust. Then you pop your front hinge pins out, your upper hinge pins, and then you're done for the day. So rear diff case, upper hinge pins would be my first two pieces I would purchase for this car. Well, let's talk about the Team Corelli Spark, which has become very quickly one of my favorite buggies. You know, besides the Typhon 6S, which has been great, but honestly, again, the Spark I have come to love because it flies flatter, flies straighter, and just is very nice in the air. This car I haven't done that much to. I know you see a few bits and pieces. We got a couple Garage Life RC parts on here, the rear wing and rear wing mount. I haven't got to test this out yet. I haven't had the car out. We are running the M2C Racing emulsion shock setup on this car. Suspension feels great. Stock suspension on this thing is a little bit soft, a little bit weak for bigger jumps. After doing the shock setup on here, she has been beautiful, working really nicely. Everything else, electronics is all stock. And the only issue I still have, and I haven't found a fix for it yet, or bought a fix yet, is the center brace. The stock one had broken, buckled a number of times, finally broke. As you can see right now, it's cut off here, and it's not going the whole way to the rear chassis brace. So I still have to figure out something for this. I've been looking around at different bits and pieces. But besides that, stock, again, this car is awesome. Just needs a tiny bit of suspension work. But other than the suspension, been a fun, awesome buggy. But if there's going to be one thing that had to be done from the box, it would definitely be the suspension, getting it tuned up and getting a little heavier shock fluids in there. And after that, she felt great. And I want to touch on one little side note, guys. You know, whenever I'm showing stuff like this with different parts and pieces from other companies on here testing them, and that's what a lot of times this is strictly, you know, companies will contact me and say, hey, would you mind, you know, testing out the product and seeing how it holds up for you, see if we need to make modifications or changes to it. And I'm like, sure, you know, I'll throw it on the car. You know, I'm not in any way trying to push you to buy these products or get them. I'm simply trying to showcase them on the channel so you can see them, and then hopefully in a future video see, hey, this stuff's been working out great, or hey, no, this stuff didn't work that great, and you can make a choice on whether or not you want to buy it or not. You know, that's the same way it goes with M2C Racing. You know, with being on their test team, we're out here testing out the products, trying to find out what works, what doesn't, what needs works, or what needs adjusting or change, so that whenever the consumer out there is purchasing these products, they're getting the best version of that product that everybody as a whole has figured out and made the appropriate changes to. And you know, that's, I'm just trying to let everybody know, you know, that I'm not on here trying to push the product to you. I'm just trying to show you what my experience has been like with any of this stuff, whether or not it has been a particular car brand, aftermarket parts, aluminum parts, electronics, whatever it is. Just trying to showcase my experience, and that is it. I want to ask a question to everybody. If you invited me out bashing and you said only bring one car with you, what car do you think I would bring with you? Pause this video and drop your comment before I tell you what that car is, because I'm curious to see what everybody else thinks that might be. Okay, did you drop your comment down below? Did you get it right? That's right, guys. I know I spoke very highly of the Arma Mojave many times, but if somebody was to tell me that I could only bring one car with me on a trip somewhere to just overall have a fun day out bashing and just ripping around, the Mojave would be in my suitcase or in the back of my truck. Guys, I mean, is it going to be the biggest jumper? No. Does it handle the best in the air? No. However, if you want to talk about a fun factor of just being able to rip around and drive a car, the Mojave is just, it's just a whole other animal of its own. It's just so much fun, and the durability factor of this car is just on another level, with just simply being able to thrash this thing around, and it just keeps taking it and taking it and taking it. You cannot go wrong with the Mojave. Now, much of my Mojave here is stock. On the last bash, finally did break a couple things. Broke the battery box and something else. I don't even remember what it all was now. But I went over this thing from top to bottom, gave it a good thing. But again, stock out of the box, this thing can take an unbelievable amount of punishment. But again, changed out the rear differential case, got a hot racing diff case on the back. Beyond that, we're still running all the stock electronics. Even the stock servo still in this thing, which is amazing. Also, changed out the upper hinge pin brace, the aluminum one. Best thing right there. So again, the Mojave, honestly, doesn't need very much. The fun factor is a 10, and the durability is honestly a 10, and the amount of upgrades this thing needs is very minimal. One of the best and most fun cars out there, and I absolutely love the Mojave. And I'm sure Speed Psycho would agree with that one even. But again, if I was to buy another one of these right out of the box, first two upgrades, diff case in the back, aluminum upper hinge pin brace, and go out there, rip this thing, and have fun, guys. Now, the jackhammer, obviously, this thing is far from what it ever used to be. It used to be the Traxxas sledge, obviously, and it's obviously very far from that now. So it's kind of hard to talk about what may have been the best upgrade for this car, but I'm going to do my best thinking of it in the sledge form and what the best thing I had done to it out of the box. Now, probably going through this thing and thinking back to when this car was in its stock form, the biggest issue I had from this car right out of the box was the motor mount setup, and being able to set your gear mesh and adjust all that was absolute garbage. It was the most insane setup I ever seen Traxxas put together, honestly, for a motor mount setup. Some of you may like it, some of you may hate it. I was definitely one of the ones that I couldn't wait to tear that piece of junk out of there. So definitely whenever I went with the forward-facing motor mount setup from M2C Racing was awesome, being able to change out and adjust your mesh properly. Now, obviously, now we're running the XL version. It's the extended chassis. I'm still running the forward-facing motor setup on it because personally I just like the way this car handles. One thing I liked about the sledge out of the box was the way that it handled and the way that it felt in the air, and I really felt like a lot of that had to do with the motor setup, because most cars, you always have the motor sitting in the rear with your ESC sitting up front, and this, they had flipped it around, and I wanted to keep that same characteristics from the original setup because I liked the way the car handled and felt. So I stuck with that. A lot of guys went with the rear-facing motor, same way as like the Armas. I like the forward setup, but definitely the motor mount was the biggest change out and upgrade on this thing. And beyond that, the second piece was definitely I went with a Trio rear differential case for this thing, and it solved all of my issues with differential problems because I was constantly tearing up teeth and gears in the back end of this thing, and that Trio aluminum diff case on the back of this helped out immensely. So if I was going to start again from ground zero with a sledge, it would be changing out the rear diff case again. I know I sound like a broken record. And changing out the stock Traxxas motor mount and being able to go with something you can properly adjust your mesh with. Beyond that, I mean, the sledge was a great platform. Honestly, I really loved the car. They definitely put a lot of thought and design into it. Really loved their A-arms. They've been holding up very well. Even all of their camber braces or camber links and everything have been holding up very well. So overall, can't complain. But there's two things out of the box. It would definitely be those. Now, obviously, we have the Italian Don here, but that's going to be the same setup with just worrying about the diff case and all that and changing those things out. And all my street cars, I know most of them really don't stay as street cars, and I end up launching them down at the skate park and beating on them. So it's kind of hard to really say anything you need out of them. If you're using them under normal circumstances and what the cars were intended for, I mean, a lot of street cars don't need that much. However, I have added a few braces and things to mine just because I beat the snot out of them. And again, guys, we're talking about all these different upgrades and stuff that I've done to stuff and the key parts. And I hope you guys are taking away the key parts that I talked about, not the fact that a lot of my cars are obviously very heavily upgraded. A lot of the stuff, you know, honestly, isn't necessary. To be 100% honest with you, but also going through testing stuff out from beginning to end, I get a lot of parts on these cars and testing them out and seeing how they hold up and how they work. But overall, you know, depending, you really have to judge upon your bashing. You know, a lot of guys want to buy a car and immediately go out there and buy every aluminum bits and pieces for cars and upgrade the heck out of it. And I get it. It's fun buying pieces for the cars and going over them and doing the upgrades. I enjoy tearing them apart just as much as anybody. However, you know, if you're not wanting to throw a ton of money out there you know, pay attention to what breaks, pay attention to what other people are breaking out there, and worry about that stuff first. And then later on, if you want to upgrade stuff, you know, go ahead and do that. But you really don't have to throw all these heavy upgrades, especially if you're out there just kind of doing some normal bashing and ramp bashing and, you know, jumping, you know, 20, 30, 40, 50 feet and stuff like that. You know, a lot of times, you know, the chassis and the shock towers and things like that aren't always necessary. So definitely judge what parts you need, you know, upon your bashing and what you're going to do with that car and how heavy you're going to beat on it. And that's the best thing I can tell you. But I just kind of wanted to go over the key parts, and so far this year with the Corrales especially, and some of the newer rigs, what I've done to them and what has been, you know, the key upgrade or two out of all those that made the biggest difference to the car. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video, but I think that's going to do it for today. So until next time, y'all be safe, be careful out there. Peace out, everybody.